Right, welcome back to our core skills work on pronunciation. This week we're going to work on, I'm going to call them confusing words. It will become clearer what I mean by confusing words. You will remember that in the first week, at the end, I gave you some homework to actually go and watch The Chaos, that poem, The Chaos. It relates to some of the issues that come up in The Chaos and a lot of the issues that you confront as users of English as well in your day-to-day learning experience. So I'm going to call it confusing words, but precisely what that means will become clearer as the lecture carries on. Okay, so we'll start with, one second, last week's homework. So you will remember that I asked you to conjugate these regular verbs and apply the ED pronunciation rules that we discussed last week. Okay, and there were these words which I left for you to work on, some of which are more familiar to you than others, but nevertheless, the important thing was not that you necessarily knew what those words were, but if you didn't, of course, go and look them up, but to understand the sound of ED on the end of each of those words. So this is what you should have come up with as far as the ED sound for each word is concerned. I will read them aloud, maybe together with you. Dream becomes dreamt. So it's a t, dreamt. Access becomes accessed with a t sound. Implement, implemented, ID, if you like, the id sound. Described, just a d. Pushed with a t. Discern becomes discerned with a d. Is it record or record? Verb, record, recorded with an id. Sign becomes signed. Belittled, proved, published with a t. And dithered. Okay, so the ed sounds on each of those, you have a good old mix. You'll notice, of course, the d sound does dominate, but as long as you are able to identify the id ones and the t sounds as well, that in itself is progress. All right, so let's get into your memories slightly. 3 weeks ago, see if you can cast your minds back to when we were talking 3 weeks ago. And we discussed nouns and verbs, but special kinds of nouns and verbs. Hopefully it won't be too difficult for you to remember the difference between the word in blue and the word in red. I want to record this meeting to have an accurate record of what we discussed. Record and record. Record and record. Noun and verb. Oranges are our biggest export. We export over 500 million tons per year. Again, same word, different emphasis. One's a noun, one's a verb. And this box contains all of my research, but I still have to research a lot more. You got your noun and you got your verb. Same word, different emphasis. Okay, now, all of this should be familiar to those of you who were with me a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think, looking at this specific issue. Words are the same with different emphasis. There's a name for words that are spelt the same, but have different meanings when they are pronounced differently. Okay, I'm going to repeat that so it's clear, because you come across a lot of this kind of thing when you're learning language, and you're going to, terms and expressions and ideas will be given to you, and you'll be looking blankly at the teacher and saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Let me say it clearly. There is a name for words that are spelt the same, but have different meanings when they are pronounced differently. That word is a heteronym. So the words that we were looking at, record, record, and so on, these are heteronyms. Notice they are spelt the same. They have different meanings when they're pronounced differently. All right? So record and record, spelt the same, different word emphasis, different meaning. One is a noun, one is a verb. Okay, they have something in common perhaps, but they aren't the same word. Heteronyms, heteronyms. It's not a lifestyle choice, it is this, all right? So, Look at these words for a minute. Look at them to yourself. Now, in the brackets, what I've done is I've identified whether it's a verb with a V, an adjective with an ADJ, and a noun with an N. What I'd like you to do, using your existing knowledge of English, I'd like you to look at these words, read them aloud to yourself if you can, and then we'll talk together in a minute, okay? Okay, now you'll notice some of them may be familiar to you, some of them will be less familiar to you. So I imagine most of you, many of you will know the first one, the verb close and the adjective close. Okay, some of you will be familiar with the last one, the verb wind and the noun and the verb wind. I don't know if you know the verb wind, but it's when you get really hit or punched really hard in your chest and you can't breathe properly. It's the most unpleasant feeling. You feel you're going to die, really, but you get winded. So somebody shoves you or pushes you, or you run into a pole, you get winded. So wind and wind, all right? Some of the others may or may not be familiar to you. Don't worry at this point. We will be looking at them a little bit more closely. All of these are heteronyms, all right? They are spelt the same. They have different meanings when they are pronounced differently. All right, we will be looking at all of these. Now, you may know some of them, all of them, none of them. Don't worry at this point, that is not important. The important thing is understanding that this exists, all right? Now, look at the differences as we go through each of these words, okay? Close with a Z sound, the verb, and close with a S sound is the adjective. We already talked about that one, but look at this one. Desert is a verb and desert is the noun. Okay, now you may not be familiar with the verb to desert, desertion, for example, but desert, I live in Australia, most of this continent is desert. The verb incense and the noun incense, spelt the same, completely different meanings. One has nothing to do with the other. Number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number. Now I put that in a yellow color, the B, because it's a silent B, number. Anyone know what the adjective numb means? Anyone who likes Pink Floyd will know the song Comfortably Numb. Numb is what happens when you get an injection in your tooth because they're going to pull something out or drill a hole in your head. Numb is that sensation or the lack of sensation. Numb, number, numbest. So you have that progression, if you like, the comparative and the superlative. Number and number. So, two words you may not be familiar with. Pasty and pasty. One is a vowel sound A, the other one is a diphthong sound A. Pasty and pasty. Pasties, I don't know if you've ever had one. If you live in Australia or Britain, you may be familiar with them. It's a kind of a pie. I like them. And pasty is to do with color, all right? The verb resign with a Z sound and another verb, resign, re as in again, re-sign, sign again. So resign and re-sign. This one's tricky. The noun, tear, and the noun and verb, tear. Okay, we will be going into some detail about this word, so I don't want to spend too much time on it right now. Tear, T-E-A-R, and tear, T-E-A-R. Then we have wind and wind, or rather wind, the verb, and wind, the noun and the verb. All right, so the trees are swaying in the wind. All right, so let's take 4 pairs of these heteronyms, and then what we would do, first of all, if they were new to us, or even if not, we knew one but not the other, we would look up the pronunciation. Now, I know every week I say it, you don't have to necessarily learn all of the phonetic symbols. That's not necessary. However, to illustrate the difference between sounds, if you're going to write it down, it's really quite important. And if you look them up on almost every website, there will be the the phonemes. And if you're lucky, although nowadays I think it's fairly standard, there is also the little button you press, and then some voice says, either in an American accent, sometimes in a British accent, tear, tear, and tear. Okay? So again, as far as pronunciation, the impact this has on your pronunciation, it is very important that you actually hear this word. Now, you're very privileged in this time that you have ready access to computers which will provide you with precisely what you need. If you can't read the phonemes, you press a button and you can actually hear it. You can then mimic that. You can imitate it, and you can produce the sound yourself as well. So it's a golden age to be learning other languages, in this case the English language, because you are given the assistance that you need in order to know how a word should be pronounced. You can then mimic and do it yourself. So we have tear, tear, wind, wind, dessert, desert, pasty, and pasty. All right? So we've taken 4 pairs of these heteronyms, and what are you going to do with them then? You're going to come up with clear definitions in your own words. Okay? If you want language, new words to stick in your mind, you've really got to contextualize it and you've got to define it. Okay? But first, be clear in your definition. Okay? You look something up and then you just copy what you've read in dictionary.com or wherever. It's not really going to help you. You've done the exercise, but you've not really done anything meaningful in the learning process. So look up the word, understand what it means, and then put it into your own words. So tear, tear in her eye, she's crying tears, or he's crying tears, not to be sexist about it. Tear, there's a tear in his trousers, or if you're in America, your pants. And to rip something, so that's a synonym. Synonyms will help you as well. All right, tear in his trousers. Tear means to rip something. Wind, as in the breeze, the lovely sea breeze, if you live in Perth, the Fremantle Doctor. To wind means to turn something around in a circle, to wind. Okay, that's winding, winding something up, winding something around. The verb, to desert. Okay, didn't really come up with a good definition, but to abandon would be a perfect synonym for to desert. And desert, a dry place like the Sahara. Okay, a pasty is a kind of pie, and pasty means pale and looking sick. So apologies for to desert, but yes, to abandon would be a synonymous idea. And then you come up with your definitions in your words. These I came up with after checking a dictionary, came up with my definitions for each of these words. Okay, so I've heard the words, I know what they're meant to sound like, I've got a context for these words, and then sentences. As she waved him goodbye, there was a tear in her eye. As he bent over for the pencil, there was a sudden tear in his trousers. All right. Now, as far as fixing these words, fixing these pronunciations in your head is concerned, record this. Okay. Make this into an exercise that you do as far as meaningful recording, so it's there for your recollection in the future. So you start doing this, let's say, in week 2 of your 8-week preparation for your test. It's a good thing that you can come back to, just refresh your memory. What was I doing? What was I learning? What was I talking about? You come back, you press play, and okay, it's all come back to me, right? So I've got the words, I've put them into a sentence context. It was impossible to fly the kite without any wind. If anyone's seen Mary Poppins, that's a good one. Let's go fly a kite. New watches have batteries, so you don't have to wind them up all the time. I don't know if anyone has inherited a very old pocket watch or a wristwatch, but you used to have to wind them up. No longer, now we have batteries. Winding, remember, turning around and around in circles. He's had enough of life in the military, so he's decided to desert. Careful when you do that, because they might actually shoot you. But the idea of abandoning his career in the army, he deserted the military. You could, I suppose, desert your family as well. Deforestation is turning parts of South America into a desert. Okay, so where once there was forest, today there is desert. Desertification, a desert. We stopped at the bakery to get a sausage roll and a pasty. Again, if you don't live in Australia or in Britain, this may not mean very much to you, but if and when you come, I will welcome you to try a delicious sausage roll and a pasty. Janet's looking quite pasty and ill today, okay? That colour that people go when everything drains out of their face and they just look like they're going to vomit at any moment or pass out, or both, you never know, or faint. That's also interesting when somebody faints on you. Okay, so I've got my words, I know how they're meant to sound, I've defined them in my own words, and then I've put them into a context and read those aloud, all right? If you want to know about meaningful language learning, this is going to really have an impact on your memory, all right? Just reading something isn't enough. You've got to actually produce the words, all right? So let's move on. What is this word? Now, again, for the 50th time, you don't need to know the phonemes, but if you do, if you're familiar with them, what do you think that word is? Won't hold you in suspense for too long. The answer is it see, the noun, S-E-A, or is it see, the verb, S-E-E? Okay, see, S-E-A, or see, S-E-E. I suppose if I wanted to add one, I could add the Holy See, as in where the Pope lives in Rome, the Holy See. S-E-A or S-E-E, the sound is S and E, see, right? So, my question to you, is see a heteronym? Now, let's refresh our memories. Heteronyms are words that are spelt the same but have different meanings when they're pronounced differently. Is it a heteronym? No. Thank you for the people who responded. No, it's not. See is not a heteronym. It's not a heteronym. So what is it? Well, let's do a little comparison. Do me a favor, look at these words and read them to yourself, or read them aloud, read them out loud. Like see, they are not heteronyms. But what do you notice? Okay, I won't leave you in suspense for too long. We'll come back to them, don't worry. There's a name for these kind of words. That's homophones. Now, if you knew that, congratulations. If it's a new word for you, again, there's only two complicated words I'm going to give you this week. One is heteronomes and one is homophones. They do sound like lifestyle choices. They aren't. They are parts of language. Homophone, all right? All right? Homo meaning the same. So, they are words that sound the same, but they are spelled differently. These are homophones, all right? And again, if you read The Chaos, you'll have seen a number of homophones in there as well. Homophones are words that sound the same, but are spelled differently. If anyone's familiar with a pun or what puns are plays when you play on a word. We will often make puns out of homophones because they can be very, well, maybe not very funny, but amusing, all right? So let's go back to those words and look at those words with the phonemes. What do you notice about the phonemes in each case? Whether or not you are learning the phonetic symbols, you should be able to notice that they are all absolutely identical. Would, the modal verb, is the same as would, the noun. Nose, the verb, is the same as knows, the noun. Q, Q-U-E-U-E, by the way, is a very interesting word, to line up. I don't know which countries you come from. I lived in Brazil for a long time. People there don't really know how to queue very well, although in some regions maybe better than others. And queue as in a pool cue. Red, the color, red, past of read. By, the verb, by, the preposition, and by, see you later. Heal, the contraction, heal, the part of your foot, and heal, the verb, heal the sick. Then you have there, and there. Small anecdote, in year 9, when I was 13 or 14 years old, I had a fight with Mr. Leach about there, and there. Needless to say, I was right, and he was wrong. I don't know if he's still with us, but I hope not. Right, so look, what do we do about these homophones? How do we make sure that we are spelling the right way We're probably okay with the way that we pronounce them. We are here in this webinar concerned about pronunciation. Visualize, okay? We've got pair and pair. Now you notice the one on the left is pair of socks, and the one on the right, pair, is a piece of fruit. I really like a good pear, but I often bite into them and I'm underwhelmed. I'm extremely unimpressed by the profound lack of taste. But a good pear, you can't go wrong. And I would never wear socks that color. I don't know if maybe you disagree with me and it's okay to wear socks that color. I would not. So let's get the context so that we know what we're talking about. Pear is P-E-A-R, a piece of fruit, and then the sentence. I bought some fruit for the picnic, including an apple and a pear. All right, there's the context, there's the word, P-E-A-R, you can't go wrong. And pair, P-A-I-R, means two of something, okay? You could talk about two people and say, yeah, you two, you're a pair of idiots. That's a bit rude, but a pair of socks, a pair of trousers, a pair of jeans. I'm staying overnight, so I've packed some underwear and a clean pair of socks. Okay, a pair of socks, right? Pair of pants, pair of socks, pair of knickers. I suppose anything that you put two through, pair of gloves. All right, so I'm going to give you a task now, all right? Make a note of these words, okay? Look at them. I'm going to leave them on the screen long enough for you to properly pay attention to them. And what I'd like to do is write one homophone next to each. Now remember that the homophone is spelled differently, but they sound the same. If you know how to pronounce the word that you can see, you should be able to write out the word that you cannot see. All right? I'll do an example with you afterwards with the first word there. But look at those words, and in every single case, if you can, write down one homophone next to each. Okay. Okay, now I can see a lot of you providing me with answers there. Great. Very good. Nice, lovely. Okay then, so you've got a whole bunch of words there. If I just take the first one there, I'm going to expand on that one, but look at the answers there and compare them with what you actually wrote down. Aisle, 8, blue, break, sight, dear, die, guest, heroine, maid, missed, one, plane, stationery, tail, and sun. Okay, now if you got all of them, many congratulations to you. There are some here, I must say, that individual native speakers of English do struggle with. A good example of that is stationery. Every day I go out into the street here and I'm absolutely gobsmacked at how badly people spell. Don't fall into the trap of relying on spell checking to make sure you're doing the right thing. Remember, in your tests, there's no spell check. There will not be a nice wobbly red or wobbly blue line to indicate that you're spelling something wrong or wrongly. Please get into the habit of checking your spelling yourself, because that way you can actually improve it. Now, it is true that after your test, you will probably be working on Microsoft Word or a similar program, and there will be spell checkers. That's fine in the rest of your life. And between now and your tests, please devote your time to making sure that you are spelling in the right way. All right? And of course, it makes all the difference in the world. If you write 1, 2, 3, WON, and then 2, TOO, you got problems. All right? Not good enough. It's a very easy way of losing marks. So if we look at aisle, okay, I want you to take 4 pairs of these homophones, and I'd like you to define each word and put them into a contextualizing sentence. All right. Now, aisle, the first one, I'm going to do with you now. But I'd like you to choose any 4 of these, any 4 pairs, and then put them into a context yourself. So dye, a lot of people won't know that dye means to change the color of something. Well, they're giving you an answer already, but you will probably know the verb to die, as in to not be alive anymore, to pass away. Plane, an aeroplane, but what is P-L-A-I-N? Check it out and make sure that you get the right meaning. Of course, P-L-A-I-N, plane, has more than one meaning. That doesn't mean anything. One thing doesn't mean the same as another. So just choose one definition of, for example, plane, that's fine. One example of maid, one example of heroin. Put it into the context in the same way that you're going to see that I'm doing here. Aisle means I will, it is a contraction. Aisle means a corridor or a passage on a plane or in a supermarket. And then aisle, I-S-L-E, is another word for an island. Okay? So I'm now going to contextualize these words. What have we got? Leave the washing up, I'll deal with it later on. That should be easy for you. I prefer an aisle seat when I fly so I can get to the toilet more easily. That's not true. I prefer the window. I don't really like the aisle seat. Everyone has to climb over me. And then number 3, the Isle of Man sits between England and Ireland. You'll notice that the United Kingdom is also known as the British Isles. The United Kingdom and Ireland together, the British Isles, I-S-L-E-S, Isles. And within the British Isles, you have lots of isles. We call them isles. They're islands. Isle of Man, Isle of Wight. Okay, the Scilly Isles. So it's just another word, and it is the same pronunciation as aisle, meaning I will, and aisle as in I don't really want to sit in the aisle. Okay, so this is your homework. Choose 4 of these, and this is something that you're going to be doing for next week. Again, I'll leave that there for a few seconds, and then at the end, as usual, I'll be taking your questions. So just bear with me for a few seconds. Give everyone time to make a note of the 4 that they want to do. It's easier if you have direct questions to put them into the Q&A section, but I will be checking the chat as well. Thank you very much.